Chess rules everything around me. Cream, get the pieces. Double up the rooks, y'all. Hello and welcome to HSMR Chess Hip-Hop Edition. And it's the Hip-Hop Edition because with the white pieces we see the resurrector, the RZA of the Wu Tang Clan, playing against Lex Fridman with the black pieces in his podcast that you can go and watch. I will put the link in the description. So RZA, the legendary founder of the Wu Tang Clan and the producer of the Wu Tang Clan, opened up the game with pawn to e4. And Lex responded in kind, like so, pawn to e5. So what sort of opening do you think the battle rapping rhyme spitter RZA will play? I was not surprised by the King's Gambit, a romantic, attacking, swashbuckling opening from the era where chess was all about being brave and creating beauty. Because RZA is, of course, an artist, first and foremost, and he has a very aggressive, very dynamic style as a rapper. Like, he's not a timid guy, you know, sitting, no, he's all up in your face, both with his production and his mixing, even just the rawness of those old Wu-Tang albums, and all of the old Wu stuff was just so raw and aggressive in the way it was mixed, and of course in his rhyming and his flow as well. So of course he's going to play something like the King's Gambit, just setting the tone. You know, we are going for beauty, we are going for aggression and dynamics from move 2. That's what we like to see. Lex, on the other hand, a bit more conservative, does not accept the gambit and plays d6. And he does. Lex Fridman does not live back in the 1800s, where it was considered cowardly and ungentlemanlike to not accept gambits and sacrifices. RZA is not disturbed by this at all. He just plays book move, knight to f6. And Lex plays knight c6. This, of course, RZA's move was knight to f3, of course. It's a little tired. I'm a little tired. It's late. We're just hanging out, thinking about the boo. And looking at RZA's chess. How cool is it that one of the illest and most legendary rappers alive plays chess, and he's good at it? We see he plays bishop to c4, so it's very clear what he's doing. He is playing this perfectly so far. The King's Gambit with this f-pawn is about getting rid of this pawn, exchanging it off, preferably for the e-pawn somehow, so we can activate a rook along this line, looking at this f7 pawn, along with this bishop, coordinate an attack here. But Lex plays a good move. He also makes a bishop move here, And bishop to g4 pins the knight to the queen, so the knight cannot move, because then we would lose the queen. And we don't really know how strong Lex is at this point, and therefore it's very, very sensible that we see castles from RZA. And yeah, I'm actually really impressed with how well RZA played this game. He played a near perfect game, and even though his opponent turned out to be an aspiring or a learning chess player, RZA's accuracy was actually quite impressive to me. Okay, after castles we see a sort of a dubious idea by black, but this is the kind of things that beginners do, that learning players do, and maybe you could even try in a game, because Lex sees a tactic, forced line. He starts by capturing the knight, and he has calculated that when this is recaptured by the queen, he can fork the queen, madam, and the f2 pawn, hello, with his knight like that. What he may not have considered is that RZA can just move back with the queen, so it's no longer attacked, and now it's defending the pawn. Oh, did you see that? Yeah, my lady got this. Oh, okay. And what's the problem now? Well, the problem is this piece is developed looking at f7. This piece is still developed looking at f7. The king is castled, and we have some development and control in the center. So white has great development and a ready-made attack. And by trading off this bishop here, Lex has now put himself in a position where he is severely behind in the development of his forces. So the position is not lost just yet, but we can see what we would call a superior positional understanding from white's play, and we would say that it's a strategical blunder to play the way that black has played here. And he actually kind of makes it worse by capturing on f4 with the pawn, and that is recaptured by the rook. Rook takes f4. Because he really needs to not defend, but develop these guys, you know? So you got to bring all your friends to the party before you try to attack. I've also been thinking about why chess seems to be so popular with guys like RZA, Jizza, and in general street culture and hip-hop culture from this particular era that the Wu came from. And it's kind of interesting, wouldn't you say, that we take this ancient game. You know, the rook is named after a war chariot, Rook. I think I mentioned that in another video. That was the name for a war chariot 1500 years ago. That's why it's called a rook. And these pieces, this ancient game from a country far away. Why does it have such an appeal? to guys like RZA, because he talks a lot about chess. He rhymes about chess. He has even written a book about chess. And I've been thinking, okay, you take this old game, and you take this emerging, completely new culture of hip-hop, largely born out of a people without roots in a way, because there's the African American population that created hip-hop, and they didn't have 1,000 years worth of culture, because they had been uprooted by the great crime that was slavery. And something about chess just seem to work for them. And I think one thing could be that if you take the virtues of the good battle rapper, they are being clever, being one step ahead of your opponent, outsmarting your opponent, not using physical violence, but using your wit and your brain and your skill to overcome your opponent. So that was sort of the origin for battle rap, even, that, you know, how about instead of shooting each other, we battle rap and see who's best. And well, that's very much like chess, wouldn't you say? And it's also a game where if a guy like RZA, or like these guys that came from the ghetto in many cases, and they didn't have a lot of money, so they were not going playing ice hockey, you know, where you need, I don't know, skates and some kind of staff and a lot of gear. Like, that was just not happening. But chess, one of the absolutely beautiful things about chess is you do not need a fancy board like this. You can draw one yourself, and you can play the most amazing chess on a piece of paper, you know. And so it fits in with the poor people, and of course a lot of these people were poor as well. We should also get on with the game. I just get lost in the ramble. I think it's quite fascinating, I must say, with how hip-hop and chess found each other. And Lex found a bad move here. He played queen to g5, attacking the rook and developing the queen, maybe looking at getting some checkmate going. What's the problem? The problem is, at the moment, he only has these two pieces developed. His king is not safe at all, and if you contrast it with the awesome power of these two pieces and this one and this safer king, maybe it looks like the queen is not developed, but she can quickly come out and attack the king very, very quickly. Lastly, of course, when you have encastled and you see this coordination, it's easy for RZA to just play the best move here, capture the pawn with the bishop. Bishop takes f7, and that is check. So there is no time to capture the rook. King has to move, king d8. And now, a bit of a clever move, just d3. So that opens up the bishop defending the rook. Actually, if the rook moves, the bishop will be attacking the queen. Take note of that. Maybe I should just finish my rant about hip-hop and chess. So it's also a challenge to play chess. It's a challenge to yourself, of course, but you're also challenging people's assumptions about you. because this is very clearly a game about intellect and about being clever. And there was, of course, a lot of prejudice, and I guess there really still is. I haven't been to the US, so I don't know exactly how it works, but it seems there's still a lot of prejudice, and even back then, even more so, against young black African Americans, that they were uneducated, that they were sort of primitive, and the music that they made, that we now revere as like some of the most interesting lyrical achievements we've seen in recent history, that it was not understood, and at the time in the mainstream, and it was not appreciated. It was in fact frowned upon and looked down on. When you go and you play a game like chess, it has a certain gravitas to it. It says, well, I am playing this game of pure skill, pure intellectual skill, and there's nothing really separating us. It's even a battle between the whites and the blacks, but that's, of course, just reading a bit too much into it. It's just a funny coincidence. And it's almost like they're saying, oh, but if we really are, primitive and our music is so simple, then there's just no risk whatsoever that you would lose in a game of chess to us, right? That couldn't happen, of course. Do you see what I mean? Like the whole competitive aspect of hip-hop, trying to be better than the other one, they're trying to outsmart the other one with your rhyme patterns in your battles. And chess, I just think the more I think about it, the more perfect it seems, the more intuitive chess seems to be as a choice for the developing conscious hip-hop culture. Enough with that. I'm just so fascinated by it. Okay, so after d3 we saw knight to f6. So we don't have a good discovery with this rook yet, because if we capture here, trying to unveil this attack, the queen can actually just capture the rook. So instead, just a calm developing move, get all your homies in. RZA, he got all 8 of his homies into the Wu Tang Clan, and he's kind of doing the same thing here. He's just bringing all the boys to the party. And that is what Lex kind of got. Or maybe that is the learning opportunity for Lex for this game. You got to develop all your pieces. Here he played pawn to e5. Not a great move, but it actually has some ideas. So knight captures e5, and Lex played bishop to c5, and that's actually not a half bad move, because you see, if this knight moves anywhere, it will unveil a discovered attack against the king. So maybe we can really do something with that. RZA wanted none of that and played bishop to e3. Bishop to e3. And here we saw what could have been a great comeback maybe for Lex, because he played knight takes knight on e5, d5, on d5. And after bishop takes knight on d5, he actually had a chance to play a really cool move. So he's down a lot in this game. His king has no longer the right to castle. He's down. He's down 2 pawns. But he could save a bit here by playing knight back to e6. And maybe you think, okay, but I can just capture that. But then you forget about the bishop. Bishop takes bishop with a check. And they probably would interpose the rook. Then you could capture the rook. King would capture the bishop. And suddenly it's not so clear. Check. You maybe could even pick up the bishop. Like so. So. Picking up the bishop. So. Let's reset. That's the idea with this knight move. And if you capture my bishop, I recapture like that. Maybe I capture the rook first. Instead, Lex went for a different strategy, where he sort of overestimated his position. But let's check it out, because it's not necessarily all wrong. Knight takes f3, threatening the bishop and the rook. And here we can capture the knight. That's not going to work, because bishop takes bishop check, win the rook. So we have to capture the bishop. And maybe here we had a chance to capture the rook. It's still a very bad position, but we would maybe regain a bit of material. Lex instead captured this rook here in the corner. So knight takes rook on a8. Rizza played bishop back to e6, to e3 to defend the rook. And now we saw the final blunder by black. So it's tough to play against. If you are an aspiring or learning chess player, it's tough to play against somebody like Rizza. I'm not saying he's a grandmaster, but he obviously knows his chess. He knows his strategical ideas. He knows the tactics, and it can be quite tough. But hopefully Lex saw it as a learning opportunity. He played king to d7, which fails to rook f7 check. That's a big problem. He played king back to d8, bishop takes queen. On b5, that is check. King back to the starting square. On e8, rook e7 check. Here they stopped the game. It's clear that white is winning, but I can just show you the two variations. Either black goes here, and then we have checkmate, like that. And if you want to survive one more move, you can go here, then the queen comes here, and there is just no way to stop queen. Like you do anything, whatever you do, queen to to d7 will be checkmate. So the Wu Tang Clan ain't nothing to fuck with. And I hope you enjoyed this little video. I can only recommend that you listen to the podcast. Rissa is a very interesting guy. Lex is a very good interviewer. He makes just a very cool space to talk about life and chess and everything, and it's very good. So I recommend that. And I would also like to say thank you very much for watching this little video. Let me know if you like hip-hop, and if you think this whole ramble thing was, was not fit for the channel, or if you think that kind of stuff is interesting. It fascinates me endlessly how chess is, how chess reflects ideas, in societies throughout history. So yeah, thank you very much for watching. See you in the next video. Bye.